I'm going to finish this line of questioning with you, General Spain, on the CR, budget flexibilities, and specific, if you can get there, and then Air Force recruiting and lessons learned, and then Ms. Maurer, I'd like you to answer the same question as well.
Mr. Chairman, thanks for the question. We talked a little bit in the opening statement about the bad, but I echo the comments from across the table on top line restrictions. Flexibility, in my mind, really comes down to treating our readiness accounts and quality of life accounts in terms of MILCON and FSRM with the same flexibility as operations. The readiness impacts within those accounts have the same deleterious effect across the force as stopping current operations. And so by allowing flexibility across the pillars of those readiness accounts, that's manpower, infrastructure, flying and training, and parts and supply, we can mitigate some of that risk that comes along with the CR. From a recruiting standpoint, the Air Force is above glide slope on our recruiting goals for the year. We increased the number by 20%, and in fact, we're still above the 20% increase, and we have the largest delayed entry pool that we've had in 10 years and the most recruiting that we've done at this point in the year in the last 15 years. So we're in a good position.
Are there lessons learned from what you did to get over that hump?
Yes, sir. So we have increased the number of recruiters. We've increased the training, which reflects some of the things that were said before. I don't know if I was a recruiter when I first started out in the Air Force waiting to go to pilot training. It's a tough job, and you need the right people doing that work, and we're bringing the right people in, and we're training them even better than we had before.
Great. Ms. Maurer, do you have any views on in general, the line of questioning that I've been going through on CR, but in particular, we've heard the challenges of that, but in particular, what I want to hear from you is your sense on flexibilities that I know that we could provide more in the budget to give our services the ability to address some of the challenges that you put in your report, but also give them flexibility that if we have to, and certainly I wouldn't advocate for it, but another CR, another kind of budgetary constraint issue, that they have more flexibility to address them. And then also if GAOs looked at lessons learned from the recruiting kind of challenge that we had over the last 3 or 4 years and how that's come about, what are those?
Sure, thank you for the question, Mr. Chairman. On the issue of CR, talking about a full year CR makes me think back to work that we did over a decade ago looking at the impacts on sequestration. Obviously, it's a little bit apples to oranges, but we issued a report 2015-ish that looked at how sequestration impacted DOD. And at that time, we had a recommendation that DOD collect the lessons learned from sequestration and stockpile them in case they needed those lessons later on down the road. 2017, we reached out to the comptroller's shop. They said they had taken action to implement that recommendation. So that's sort of a takeaway item for the department, is to look back at what DOD did back in 2017 in terms of lessons learned on sequestration and see what, if any, of those lessons can be applied to today. In terms of flexibilities, we've heard a lot, in my teams have heard a lot about the types of flexibilities that the generals and the admiral talked about today. Obviously, GAO tries to stay a little bit agnostic in terms of specific flexibilities, but what I will say is that whatever flexibilities are offered should be directed towards ensuring the ability of the services to meet the readiness challenges that they face. I talked about earlier in my opening statement, there is a significant imbalance between resources and mission, and so that anything that can be done to help bring that into better balance would be very helpful. In terms of recruiting, we're very encouraged to see that the recruiting numbers have come up. We've issued a whole series of reports in areas where the services have critical shortfalls in the number of people they need. So, for example, at the Navy, for every 6 sailors that they need for the fleet, they only have 5 assigned. We found deficiencies in the number of air defenders. The Space Force has a really good force generation model, but they don't have enough guardians to actually carry that out, much less on the civilian and the contractor side. So that the improvements and the change in the trend line in recruiting can be helpful in that regard. in some of our work on recruiting, we think it's important for the different programs, the different services to get an understanding of what is working, what isn't working, and then double down on the things that are working and then share those lessons with each other. That way you'll get a better outcome.
No, I'm going to submit questions.
Okay, great. Thank you on that. And I still have a number of questions. Senator Horner, do you want to do another round, or do you want to submit questions? But
I will
I'm
be
going to
submitting.
stay for a while,
I'll be
since
submitting.
I have all these very important members of our military, I think.
I will be submitting, I'll be submitting questions for the record. Thank you very much, Mr.
Great.
Chairman.
Well, let me continue with some additional questions. General Mingus, one of the things that I want to try to nail down is, my understanding is the top line number for the end strength of the Army was reduced because of the recruiting challenges. We almost had to do it in a forced way. Now that we've met these numbers again, and you have almost a surplus, will you be requesting from us? And do you have the flexibility to increase your top line to a certain number? What's your flexibility on that? Because I'd like to see it. If you need more funding to get to that higher top line, I think we'd all be certainly willing to provide it. But what kind of authorities do you need to get back to a higher end strength when the reduction in your end strength was actually a resultant function of the recruiting challenges? Now that you're going in the positive direction, we want to take advantage of that to increase your end strength. What do you need? Money, authorities, both?
Thank you, Chairman. Money, yes, in the Milpers account, because what we asked for in this year's budget was an appropriations for an end strength of 442,000. What I believe will happen if the trajectories remain consistent with where they're at today, we're going to end this year somewhere between 449,000 and 452,000. So almost 10,000 over what we believe will be appropriated from a military pay and allowance account standpoint. So there will be a deficit there that we will have to come back and ask for help.
Okay.
On the authorities.
I would strongly encourage you to do that. Nobody wants a smaller Army, and
Sure.
the fact that you had to shrink due to recruiting challenges, nobody wanted that. And now that you're fixing it, we need to reward you, in my view, to get back to a higher end strength.
Yes, sir. And for authorities, the Secretary of the Army, all the service secretaries can authorize a 2% deviation
Yeah.
from what the NDAs. So that would put you at about 451.
Okay.
So we think unless it goes above that, we will be okay on authorities.
Okay, great. General Mahoney, I want to go to a topic you and I and the Commandant have discussed a lot. That's where we are in force design. And, you know, very innovative Marine Corps initiative, started with General Berger, but not without criticism. And anytime you innovate, you're going to get criticized. There's no doubt about that. I think the Marine Corps has gotten ahead of the curve on a lot of issues relating to drones and loitering munitions and, you know, light, flexible forces that can move with weapon systems that can take out Chinese shipping. All very innovative. However, one of the criticisms was that the divest to invest strategy divested too much combat power. In the Marine Corps' primary mission of a 911 force with amphibs to go anywhere in the world at a moment's notice to kick in the door with sufficient combat power was reduced. And a lot of criticisms came from, you know, within the family, retired 4-stars and retired commandants and retired very well-respected Marines. So that's a difficult balance. I remember a hearing that we had a couple of years ago on force design where, you know, I asked one of the top Marine Corps officers, hey, look, you do an amphibious invasion and then you get 3 miles in wherever you are and you have to cross a river. Wait a minute. The Marine Corps got rid of all its bridging equipment. How are we going to cross a river? The answer, I think, if I remember, was we're going to call on the Army. Now, I love the Army, but in the Marine Corps' tradition, calling on the Army was not something that we typically have done. So where are we on the balance? Where are we on things like bridging and route clearing? Where are we on things like artillery, infantry, which we cut, the Marine Corps cut a lot? And do you still think this criticism, which came from some very, very well-respected Marines, is legit? Are we recalibrating a little bit in terms of, we want an innovative Marine Corps, but we do not want to get rid of our 911 capability, kick in the door anywhere in the world and bring significant combat power to bear anywhere? And what's the balance and how are we doing on all those things, General?
Yes, Senator, we've talked extensively about this. And if you remember where the force design journey started, and that was with the statement that we are not manned, trained, or equipped for the future fight. That's something tough for a Marine to swallow. That's what generated the shift in some of the design elements of our force. We believe that we're on the right course based on operations extant today, based on experimentation that we've done, based on what the COCOMs demand. That having said, our Commandant is his top priority, in fact, is to balance that modernization, if we put that in the modernization bin, although force design is modernization, talent management, training and education, and logistics. We'll put it in the modernization bin with the ability to respond to crises. We've talked about the dearth of amphib shipping. That's significant. I believe it's strategic to the nation. As far as organic combat power goes, we divested of heavy armor. We do not believe in the situations that we were faced that we need organic heavy armor for maneuver or maneuver support. We believe we have enough artillery, both rocket artillery and cannon artillery, for the problems that we will face. We believe that we have enough engineering and engineering support. You brought up bridging. What we have found at gap negotiation, gap crossing, is a shortfall, and we have divested of bridging equipment, frankly, that was too heavy and logistically unsupportable.
So can Marines cross the river if they do an amphibious invasion and find themselves 3 miles inland and have to cross a river?
So there are other ways to negotiate a gap, Senator, you know that. But as far as bridging goes, we're looking at more expeditionary solutions. And this circles back to your point of recalibration. One of the things about force design, I'll try and keep this short, was that it immediately admitted to being wrong. We were to challenge all the assumptions along the way. If we found an assumption wanting or invalid, then we had to adjust to satisfy and verify that assumption. We have looked very closely through what we call the campaign of learning at those assumptions. We have adjusted the size of a battalion. We have adjusted some of the aviation capabilities we have. We have adjusted some of the weapons that we have either bought or not bought. And to your point, we're looking hard at expeditionary solutions to bridging. As far as joint support, frankly, I'm less concerned about the Army providing an M1A2 for us as I am about us as a joint force being able to project, set a theater, and sustain a theater from a joint perspective.
Great, thank you.